This is Mother's Day. This is Mother's Day. Of course, it's pretty late now to remind you of it. If you didn't know it before, there's not much you can do about it now. We might possibly shame you into going or phoning to a florist. They're keeping open this evening just to accommodate late consciences. Mother's Day, it's a beautiful thought, but it's somebody with a hurting conscience that thought of the idea. It was someone who had neglected the mother for years, and then they figured out, I got to do something about Mama. And, and then they said, well, we'll give Mama a day, And knowing Mama that was easy, they figured, well, we'll just give her a day and it'll be all right with Mama. Then in return, my mother gives you the other 364, see? And I think that was awful liberal of whoever thought of the idea of giving her one out of the 365. It was tremendously liberal. We have Apple Week and Don't Beat Your Wife Week and Safety Week and everything. They could have given Mother a week, but that would have been giving Mother a little the best of it. So they says, we'll give Mother a day. And, of course, I doubt even then if the thing had gone through, if it hadn't been for the florist. They grabbed it and started putting the idea over, The florist, they did that. Of course, florists have, they got mothers too. Florists have, but they've got more flowers than they got mothers. And they've got a great organization, the florists have. It's nothing unusual any day for me to get a telegram saying, Congressman Jasbo just died. We have special spray of beautiful lilies holding till we hear from you. And well, maybe I didn't know more than know Congressman Jasbo. But it just shows you that these florists are on the job every minute. Florists they've just practically corralled this Mother Day business. They have led us to believe that no matter how we have treated our mother during the past year, that a little bouquet of hyacinths or verbenias will square it, Not only with Mother, but with our conscience, too. When, as a matter of fact, you don't have to be squared with your mother. She knows you better than you know yourself. A mother is the only thing that is so constituted that they possess eternal love. Under any and all circumstances, and no matter how you treat them, you still have their love. I was telling that to my wife today. I said, Betty, I says, a mother and a dog is the only two things that has eternal love. No matter how you treat them. And my wife made me cut the dog out. Said it didn't. Well, it didn't sound very good, and it might sound disrespectful to a mother, but I certainly didn't mean it that way, but it was the only thing there really is. You know what I mean? And so the poor old dog, he'll have to go. I can't use it on account of my wife made you leave the dog out, but he still loves you just the same, and just as much as a mother did, but this being, maybe someday we'll have Dog Day too or something. And I can use that on the dog, but I really do. I hate to leave the dog out, but my wife runs this outfit. Today is Plan Day. I've sort of given an inkling of Roger's plan to agonize work today. But, the Townsend plan and various others of similar nature went down in Congress with a tremendous majority. So it looks like kind of a bad day for plans. I think Townsend was conscientious, well-meaning, humanitarian old gentleman. I believe he'd had lowered his sights and called for maybe $50 instead of $200 a month, and took out the clause where they had to spend it. Old people, are naturally kind of conservative and saving, and they'd have hated to spend money every week if they really didn't need to. Our government is the only people that just love to spend without being compelled to at all. But the government is the only people that don't have to worry where it's coming from. Friday, Congress did pass a bill to give $15. Then the state is to match that, and they give $15, and that would make $30. Well, the Senate, it's got to go before the Senate yet. I think the Senate should raise that at least 5 or 10 more, and then the state, and that would make it maybe $40 or maybe $40, $50. Lots of wise guys can kid about this old fellow Townsend and call him a nut, but he's got a lot to do with getting the old folks any pension at all, I think. He throwed such a scare into Congress that they might have to pay $200 if they finally settled with him for 15. That's what. And you know, the national problem is in this country today is not who shall be relieved and whose money shall relieve him, but who shall be the one that plays Santa Claus and actually hands out the presents, you know. That's the main problem today, is who hands out the presents. Huey says he should wear the whiskers. And Ickes and Mr. Hopkins, they say no, since we've got sleigh bells ourselves. Governor Talmadge down in Georgia, he had a plan. It hit a rut and knocked him right out of the bread line last week. It's been a bad week on plans all around. I'm not going to get discouraged, though. In fact, these other failures, well, they've given me confidence, you know. More hope that my plan will be a success. Now, my plan, to state it in a nutshell, and in fact, that's where all plans come from. And the nuts should never be cracked. But here is my plan in a nutshell. My plan is a plan to end all plans. It's to do away with all plans. That's what it is. There ain't but one place that a plan is any good and that it'll really work, and that's on paper. But the minute you get it off a sheet of paper and get it out in the air and it blows away, that's what. Now, Mr. Roosevelt, he dragged more of these school marms out of little red schoolhouses. And they had more plans than they had shirts. He could ask for a new plan and they could drag a fresh one out quicker than they could a fresh pair of socks. Republican presidents, that's one thing about Republican presidents. They never went in much for plans. They only had one plan that says, boys, my head is turned, just get it while you can. And somebody come along and they used that with a plan to plow under part of the cotton. And we did, and other nations like Brazil found out where we plowed it under, and they come and dug it up, and now they've got more cotton than we have. Somebody had a plan to teach hogs birth control, and now it's a habit with them. Now you can go out and find a deer quicker than you can a hog now. Somebody had a plan to plow under every third acre a week, and the wind come along and blew out the other 2 acres. It was all a fine plan. It was a fine plan, well carried out. We wanted to raise commodity prices, and Mr. Wallace, naturally, he wanted to give the farmer a profit, the same as the manufacturer. But now we find there's more people eating than there is raising. You see, that's why you can never get the thing straight with a farmer, because there naturally is more eating than there is raising. And if you get things too high, the guy that eats is going to come in hollering, you know. So that's what they're kicking on now. They're kicking. So plans just don't work. If they're milk and honey to you, they're poison ivy to somebody else, you know. NRA, that was a fine plan. It was based on the theory that everybody that had should help those that hadn't. That was all the NRA ever was. But the minute we found out that while it might be helping the other man, it certainly wasn't helping us, and it blew up. The NRA was started with a lot of parades and ended in almost a revolution. Father Coughlin's got a plan. Oh, now it's Father Coughlin, know him, he's a well-meaning man who'd like to help his fellow man to better his condition. Whether his plan will work or not is another question. But even if your plan don't work, it ain't any discredit, you know. Our own Savior had a plan, in fact, 10 of them. He left them to us, and he knew they'd help us, and we know they'll help us. He said, love thy neighbor as thyself, but I bet there ain't 2 people in your block that's speaking to each other. We know there should be no war. We know that old people, maybe they should get $200 a month, or maybe more. We know that everybody should share the wealth. We know that all these things We know them all in our own heart, but I don't know, we just ain't going to do them, that's all. You know, we know. Now, Huey's plan of share the wealth, it's a marvelous idea. Our own downright conscience tells us that there's no reason why anybody should have more than you. There ain't nothing wrong with the plan, only just one little defect. Nobody ain't going to share it with you, that's all. I know a lot of tremendously rich people that should share their wealth with me, but they just don't see it my way. Then I know folks that ain't got as much as I have that think I ought to share with them. Well, I just can't hardly see it that way either, you know? That is, even if I can see it that way, I'm not doing it. Well, we take the case, for instance, of Huey. Suppose Huey was asked to divide his publicity with the other 95 senators. Now, what a fine thing, you know. Say, Huey, we just want you to split this publicity with them, see? Well, that'd be just like getting J.P. Morgan to split what he had with the Navajos or something, you know? Morgan would say, well, why should I split with the Navajos? I got nothing in common with the Navajos. Well, that's what Huey would say. Why should I split with the other 95 senators? I've got nothing in common with them. Now, everybody got a plan. Congress got a plan. That plan is to pass all resolutions that have an appropriation connected with it, see? Anything that carries an appropriation, Congress will pass it, see? They'll vote it, but they don't vote where the money's coming from. That's what Congress' plan is, to keep it a secret where the money is coming from. That's one of their plans. Mr. Hoover's got a plan. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's got something to do with moving east next fall, a year from this next fall. Ogden Mills used to be Secretary of the Treasury, very able man. He's got a plan. Here's to see that Mr. Hoover don't move east. He says that he's got more money than Hoover and is naturally more able to move himself. Teddy Roosevelt Jr., he's got a plan. His is that there should be a Roosevelt in the White House, but not this one. Mrs. Roosevelt, she has plans, plenty of them. She plans to do bigger and more things during the next administration. Now, the Republicans, they got a plan. Their plan is to do nothing, and then Roosevelt can't either. The Democrats, they got a plan. Well, they got millions of them. You couldn't hardly mention all of that. But the Democrats' plan is next year is election year. See? Hold the post office, boys. They shall not pass. That's all. Big business has got a plan. Theirs is, they talk to Mr. Roosevelt, says, quit trying to reform us and give us a chance to recover. Roosevelt says, can't you reform and recover too? Well, but big business answer is, no, we can't do anything with a cop on every corner watching everything we do. They say, give us a chance, and on it, when we're able, we'll reform. And then besides, they asked Mr. Roosevelt, Mr. Roosevelt, we never know what you were going to do next. Roosevelt says, neither do I. He said, So it just seems, you know, all these plans, but none of them pleases everybody, you know. So my plan, which is still in the nutshell, is when a senator, a congressman, or even a man of great ability comes to Washington with a plan, is send them to Russia. Yes, sir. That's the home of plans, you know. Russia, they eat and sleep and drink plans in Russia. Now my plan is don't plan. Whatever you do, don't do it perfectly, you know. Live haphazard, you know, just kind of go through life haphazardly. Well, even more than we are now. There's nothing in the world as common as an idea, and there's nothing in the world as hard to carry out as an idea. So let's all just kind of call a moratorium on plans. If the Republicans would forget their main plan, which is to get into the White House, and the Democrats would forget their main plan, which is to stay in there, and the others, all these various third parties, would just look at their history, which shows that none of them ever did get in there, why, we'd all recover overnight.
right on top of my advice to not plan, well, it come a plan from Secretary Morgenthau, who's Secretary of the Treasury. His father used to be an ambassador to Turkey, a fine old gentleman and a good friend of mine. But this Morgenthau, the young fella, very able man, he come out with a plan to put a bigger and better tax on these big estates, these tremendous big inheritance taxes, to be exact. That is men who died and on an estate of, say, $10 million, where the government will it takes about 90% of it, and then giving the offspring 10. And after Mr. Morgenthau gets through with him, and then on estates of 100 million and 200 million or a billion and like that, where the government just takes all of that and notifies the heir, says, your father died a pauper here today. He died a pauper here today, and he's being buried by let's see, it'll be the MEBA, the MABE, that's the Millionaires Emergency Burial Association. It's a kind of a branch of the RFC. Now, mind you, I'd like to tell it all this, I don't hold any grief or any great grief either for a man that dies and leaves millions and hundreds of millions and a billion. I don't do that. But I don't believe Mr. Morgenthau's plan will work because he gives figures in there that shows what this new inheritance tax would bring in every year. He says, oh, in 1936 we'd get so much, in 1930, all right along, see? And he gives these figures to show what it's bringing every year. That is, as long as the Democrats stay in. And he seems to know just who's going to die each year and how much they go to leave. Now, brother, that's planning, ain't it, when you figure out that? Now suppose, for instance, he's got scheduled to die J.P. Morgan. He's got him scheduled to die on a certain year. And you can bet they can arrange it. They'll have him die while the Democrats are in, so so they can get the benefit. Now, I think Mr. Morgan is a nice man. I never met him at work. That was the time when he was on trial in Washington and he had the midget on his knee. And I met him there, but he's a very nice fellow, and very amiable, nice fellow. And I don't hear from him very seldom, but I think his patriotism maybe would compare with some of the rest of us. But whether he'd be patriotic enough to want to die on this year's schedule or not, just to make Morgenthau's budget balance. I mean, he might be rather unreasonable and not want to do it. As I say, old men is contrary, you know what I mean? And rich old men is also contrary. They've had their own way so long with that. So in order for Mr. Morgenthau's plan to work out, I'd say for it to work out 100%, he's got to bump these wealthy guys off or something. Oh, now, that government's doing everything else, but there is a humane society. Now, I received a wire this week from a congressman friend of mine who wants a copy of my plan to read into Congressional Record. Now, I feel pretty good about that. That's the highest praise that a humorist can have, is to get your stuff into Congressional Record. Just think my name will be right in there alongside of Huey Long's and all those other big humorists. And you see, ordinarily, you got to work your way up as a humorist and first get into Congress. Then you work on up into the Senate, and then if your stuff is funny enough, it goes into the Congressional Record. But for an outsider to get in there as a humorist without having served his apprenticeship in either the House or the Senate, well, that's... I'm not bragging, but by golly, I feel pretty big about it. Did I ever tell you, I don't know whether I did or not, did I ever tell you about the first time I ever had any stuff in that daily? Well, I'd written some fool thing, and it pertained to the bill that they was arguing, or that they was kidding about, rather, and at the time in Congress, it's in the Senate, rather. So some senator read my little article, and anything that a senator reads goes into the record.
And as it was during his speech, it naturally went in. So, well, another senator rose and said, you know, and as they always do, if you've ever seen them, does the gentleman yield? They always say that. But they call each other gentlemen in there. But the tone that they put on the word, it would be more appropriate, you know, the way they can say gentleman, you know what I mean? It'll sound right if he come right out and says, does the coyote from Maine yield? You know what I mean? That's about the way it sounds, you know. He says gentleman, but it kind of sounds like coyote, you know. And then the man says, I yield, you know. Or if he don't, the other guy will keep on talking anyhow. And so the coyote from Maine says, I yield to the polecat from Oregon. You know, he don't say polecat, but I mean, he says gentleman in such a way that it's almost like polecat. Well, anyhow, that's the way they do. They're very polite in there. And but I must get back to my story. When this senator read my offering, the other senator said, after all the yielding was all over, and the other senator said, he says, I object to the remarks of a professional joke maker being put into the Congressional Record. You know, meaning me, see? Taking a dig at me. See, they didn't want any outside fella contributing. And, well, he had me wrong. Compared to them, I'm an amateur. And the thing about my jokes is they don't hurt anybody. You can take them or leave them. You know what I mean? You know, you say, well, they're not funny, or they're terrible, or they're good, or whatever it is, but they don't do any harm. You can just pass them by. But with Congress, every time they make a joke, it's a law. You know, and every time they make a law, it's a joke.